I see in your eyes the same fear that would take the heart of me. A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day. An hour of wolves and shattered shields when the age of men comes crashing down. But it is not this day. This day we fight. By all that you hold dear on this good earth, I bid you stand, men of the West!
So, as you can see, before this fight, they were just full of fear. They were being ordered into battle, and it was a constant loss. And what Aragorn kind of depicts is showing a little bit of himself and showing that, you know, it's okay to be afraid. We're going to go in there and we're going to muster up some action, and that's what happened. So, how can we fix it? A few tips are you can stay on point. I've seen too often that when people try to be authentic, they can go off on tangents and show off a little bit too much about themselves, go off on personal stories. So it's important to keep in mind that if you're in business communication or giving a presentation, you should still try to stay focused on the task at hand and make sure that it relates to your objective. Also, while we want to invoke emotional reactions from our audience, you also want to stay away from invoking pity. If you say a sad story about, you know, it's tragic, and then at first the audience relates, and then maybe it goes a little too far, and then that can be really distracting as a lesson as well. So probably one of the most helpful tips directly from this article is come up with 2 strong personal anecdotes. My suggestion, maybe one that is a success, one that is a failure. Practice them, be familiar with them, kind of like an elevator pitch, but just a personal story that you can either tell at an interview if somebody asks you, or if you can say it on stage if it relates to the material. If you can get comfortable with this as a starting point, it will help you bridge into telling personal stories better and showing yourself more. But you have to make sure that these stories are actually authentic. So as you can see, we went through a few examples of how the different Lord of the Rings races had to really embrace engaging communication in order to rally everybody towards the same cause. Denali went through initiating a call to action when the tree ants weren't going to do anything until they noticed that their house was essentially on fire, straight from the article. Robel talked about keeping it simple. If it's too complicated, then it's hard to accomplish anything. People won't buy into what you're trying to sell them. They won't take action, so keep it simple. And then John talked about utilizing powerful icons. It's like he said, if the icon is well known and everybody already knows who that is, it's easy to jump right into the action and to the point. But if they're not, then it's just going to bog down your presentation. Theo talked about generating interest with your speech. Movies or meetings. I think we all know the answer to that. And lastly, I talked about being authentic and how that's one of the most important and crucial tools that you could use among many others. But if you're going to start somewhere, start with 2 stories that show a little bit about yourself. And with that, we would like to open the floor to if anybody has any questions.
Questions?
Yes.
How did you guys came out with the Lord of the Rings theme for the presentation?
That was my fault. So if I can rephrase that, why did we choose Lord of the Rings? Well, unfortunately, my ring is cold, so my ring is falling off. But my wife has it back there. I actually have the Lord of the Rings ring, and so I'm kind of a huge geek about it. But it really was, after we sat down and looked at it, it made sense for what we're talking about here. We're talking about engaging communication. That's the article we're doing about. So we're trying to captivate an audience and bring them in. There's no greater time that you're trying to convince people than to convince them to come and die for a cause, to show them that it matters. Like it really made sense to us when we saw that connection to go with it.
question. Anybody else have any